This is the moment that changed everything. We thought it was over, but it was just beginning. This is the surprise no one anticipated. We arrived at sunrise and had to see it to believe it. This is a day for racing through a garden. Tomb empty, linen folded, stone rolled away. He's not here. He is risen. This is what we should have expected, but couldn't have possibly imagined. This is a day for ecstatic singing, euphoric rejoicing, all-out praise. He's alive. Death is beaten. Now life is ours forevermore. Eternal destiny secured, forgiveness won. This is life and healing and purpose and party and dancing, redemption and hope. Prophecies completed, souls liberated, salvation for those who believe. Divinity and humanity, both reunited. He is risen indeed. This is Jesus. This is resurrection.
Well, good morning and happy Easter. Also, can we take a moment and welcome in all of our campuses and those of you who are joining us online? Can we welcome them in here at the Hastings campus? Now, this has nothing to do with my message, but in that bumper video, I love that British accent. I wish I could do a British accent. That would just be so cool if I could. But hey, with that being said, I want to just take a moment and think about our volunteers, all the different volunteers who really brought this together. So can we give it up for all of our volunteers? I was thinking about particularly our kids volunteers, and if your kids are in kids ministry, they're going to have an experience. This week I was walking with our staff, and I just thought this is going to be one of those moments that kids will talk about later. So can we give it up for our kids staff? Also, I was thinking about yesterday we had our trunk hop, those of you who dressed up and opened up a trunk. So let's give it up for all of our trunk hop volunteers. And then in the little bit later in the service, we'll have a chance to celebrate the artist who was here at the Hastings campus and what he did to kind of help us bring that alive. But as we were talking about kids, I was reminded back to growing up in the 80s and the 90s. Anybody remember the 80s and the 90s? So growing up in the 80s and the 90s is a little bit different. We had like Hammer Time. Anybody remember Hammer Time? We had parachute pants. And we were too legit to quit. Hey, do you understand what I'm talking about? In the 80s and 90s was a time. It was so interesting and so different that we actually would wear our clothes opposite because crisscross will make you... Okay. Some of you are trying to forget the 80s and the 90s. But it was a special time. It was an important time. And I can remember we would look forward to Fridays because this is what would be on TV. Bring up my very first picture. Boy Meets World, dinosaurs, Step by Step, Perfect Strangers with Balcony, Teenage Witch. Now, I wasn't supposed to watch that because I was Baptist, but I did. Full House. It was the good times back in the day. And one of the characters that was just so famous during that time was this guy. Bring up my picture. Steve Urkel. And Steve had an alter ego named Stefan. And I have to tell you that even though in my heart I saw myself as Stefan, but honestly in middle school I was a little bit of an Urkel. Anybody understand? Anybody know what that was like? But Urkel was famous for a phrase. He said it almost every episode when he would mess up, when he would make a mistake, and it went like this.
Did I do that?
Just about every episode. And I got to tell you, it was a special time in just life and growing up. So you race home, it's Friday, man, and you get to watch TV, and then you sleep in, you play video games. And then in middle school, there was nothing like that very first date. You remember your first date? You asked her out. You went to the movies. Your dad drove you to the movies, but because he was your ride, he sat in the back while you were at the movies. And I can remember my very first date. Any of you pull this? You're sitting there and then you go. And you see if she's going to hit your arm or if she doesn't hit your arm, and you think, yeah, this is awesome. Remember those days? I actually remember my first girlfriend. So I think I was actually 5th grade going into 6th grade. And there was this girl named Talitha. And Talitha was so beautiful. I'm talking about she was so beautiful that she took your breath away. I remember I decided to write her a love letter. So what I did was I mustered all my poetic knowledge and skills, and here's what I came up with. I said, "Dear Talitha, do you like me? Yes, no, or maybe." I drew 3 little boxes. And then to add an extra little touch, I drew a Ninja Turtle and then I put it in the lawn. And I waited, and I waited. And then Talitha got it. And then she answered on Monday, and you know what she said? I would like you guys to have some faith in a brother's game. She said yes. I gotta tell you, man, it was awesome. It was awesome. That lasted about 2 minutes. But anyway, it was a special time. That was Fridays. Love Fridays. Look forward to Fridays. But the Friday I want to talk to you about was nothing like that. The Friday for Jesus. See, today, I'm going to really answer that question that we put in all of our marketing. And the question in all of our marketing is this: what's so good about Good Friday? What's so good about Friday? You've heard it say Good Friday. What's so good about it? Here is what we read about that very first Friday, the dreaded Friday, the faithful Friday in the life of Jesus. It says, early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans on how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him and led him away, handing him over to Pilate, the governor. So early in the morning, this is early Friday morning, probably 7 a.m. After Jesus going through the Jewish system, 3 trials by the Jews. He's mocked, he's ridiculed, he's beaten, he's blindfolded, he's humiliated. He's going to go through 3 trials by the Romans. Now he's at the 6th trial. And if you imagine you were going through our court system, now he's at the Supreme Court. Pilate, the Roman governor, and he hears the plan: you are sentenced to death. But not just death, death by crucifixion. See, the Jews, if they wanted to kill Jesus, they could have had him stoned for blasphemy, but no, they wanted to totally humiliate him, so they bring him before Caesar for treason. And then he's led away. After that, what's going to happen is Jesus is then going to have to carry his cross down the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrow. After being beaten and humiliated, he falls under the weight of the cross. A guy named Simon the Cyrene helps him carry that cross up the hill called Golgotha, Calvary, the place of the skull. And then Jesus wearing this crown of thorns, total, utter humiliation. He is the king of the world. We're saying, "Hail King Jesus," and they're saying, "Look at you now. You're wearing a crown of thorns. You are a disgrace." And then they take him. They take those nails and they put it in his hands. Agony and pain and suffering. He is enduring it. And then here's what Matthew further records about that day. Verse 45 of chapter 27. It says, "From noon until 3, darkness came all over the land." You know, last night as I was thinking about this morning, I just wondered if some of you came in here and you're in darkness. Darkness comes from a lot of different things. Sometimes darkness comes from this sense that you just feel total hopelessness. Sometimes darkness comes from rejection. You've had a moment where somebody broke your heart and you just can't see any positive future. Sometimes darkness comes from grief and sadness. And it's hard when you're in darkness because other people are celebrating and other people have joy and people are singing, "Hail King Jesus," and you're wondering, is there a God in the midst of my pain, sadness, and darkness? If you've ever felt like that, Jesus can relate, he can understand, because look what happens next. In verse 46, about 3 PM, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" You know, as I read this, I thought about the pain Jesus is experiencing. He's been betrayed and forsaken by men, and now he's forsaken by his Father, God. You know, I was telling the last service that I have moments like this. My daughter, who's going to be 18 in a few months, is sitting right there on the first row. I remember when she was conceived. I remember the day that Jen told me that she was pregnant, and we were so excited. We were living in Three Rivers, Michigan at the time. The goal was, it was right around Christmas time, and after a hard year, we were filled with such good news. We had recently gotten married, and so now we have this wonderful, beautiful news. Some of you have heard me tell the story. The goal was to, on Christmas Day, to wrap up some little baby shoes and give it to my mom. And when she opened it, it would say, "From your future granddaughter." We had it all thought through and all the plan of how much joy and excitement. And a day before we're getting ready to fly down to Louisiana, my grandmother gets hit by a car and she dies instantly. A time that was supposed to be marked with joy and hope and celebration was now overshadowed with sadness. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. So we fly down home. Jen has this wonderful, joyful testimony of God's blessing and faithfulness in her womb. But in 9 months, we're going to say hello, but right in this moment, we have to say goodbye to somebody who was there for me in the good times and the bad times, who saw Keith before he was Pastor Keith, who saw Keith at the times when my grandmother came to the school and believed in me and spoke life into me, and now we're saying goodbye. Ironically, that same weekend, I was going to be speaking a message to the church the next following weekend of when God doesn't make sense. I remember as I sat and as I prepared and you know, so we buried my grandmother. Christmas came. We told my mom. My mom was excited, but she obviously still in grief and sorrow. And I remember the next Sunday as I got up to speak, I kind of told the congregation, I'm talking to you about when God doesn't make sense. And I just got to tell you, I'm in one of those moments right now. I didn't know how that was going to go over because I had this idea in my head is that when you get up to speak, you're supposed to be clear and confident. But in that moment, I was shaky. I was kind of in one of those, why God have you forsaken me now? But after that, many people came up to me and they shared how just sharing my own journey spoke to them and helped them come to faith. Jesus is having a why God have you forsaken me moment. And then from there, if you know the story, I love this towards the end of this part of the story, how he sums up 6 hours of suffering and pain. Verse 47, it says, when some of them standing heard this, they said, he's calling Elijah. So immediately one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with wine vinegar, placed it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. And the rest said, "Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, look at these next words, he gave up. He gave up his spirit. Now, when it comes to giving up, there's two types of giving up. There's giving up when I don't want to try anymore, and then there's giving up when I can't go anymore. After 6 hours of suffering from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., he has been suffering. And the way crucifixion worked is you stay on that cross. It's meant to be a long, slow process of agony where you're suffering from exhaustion and then eventually suffocation. He gave up. See, I wonder if there are some of you who came to church today and you don't feel worthy to be here because at some point you gave up on God. You gave up on marriage. You gave up on trying to have a good, positive mentality. You just gave up, and you didn't give up because you wanted to, it's because you couldn't go anymore. Jesus would say, I understand what it's like to give up. There's a moment where they take that spear and they put it in his side, and out of him comes blood and water. In medical terms, you could say that literally Jesus died of a broken heart because there's a sac around your heart, and that's actually what happened medically is he died. So what's so good about Friday? What's so good about Friday? This seems like a horrible day for Jesus, but here's why it was a good day for us. Here's how Isaiah would explain it. 700 years before Jesus came, he said this, "Surely he took our pain. He bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted." This is talking about the Jewish people. It is that Jesus is suffering for us, for them, but yet at the same time, we considered him punished, stricken, afflicted. But the reality is he was pierced for our transgression. He was crushed for our iniquities. So he was pierced for our transgressions. Our transgressions are the things that we have done. We crossed the line. We did what we were not supposed to do. Our iniquities are the things that we want to do that we shouldn't do. He was pierced for our transgression, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. By his wounds we are healed. And we all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us have turned our own way. But the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. So when I was thinking this week of who did Jesus come to die for? What's so good about Friday? Let me give you the answer in one small sentence. Is the reason that Good Friday is good is because Jesus was hurt so you can be healed. That's what's so good about Friday. And I was thinking about some of the people that Jesus came to heal. And the best way to understand who they are is just the kind of people that he hung out with during his lifetime. And the first one I see is the woman at the well, the divorced and the disconnected. In John chapter 4, we read this. There's a woman at a well, and here's what it says. In John 4:15, it says, a woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so I won't be thirsty again and have to keep coming to draw water." And Jesus told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." I imagine she drops her head and says, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you've had 5 husbands, and the man that you're now with is not your husband. What you have said is quite true," the woman replies. Why is this woman at the well? And if you study this, it's about 12 o'clock in the day. The hottest time in the day is because she's ostracized by society because she's ashamed. Most time it's the men who go to the water to get the well, but she's by herself at the 12 o'clock during the daytime because she is ashamed. And Jesus doesn't meet her before she gets her life cleaned up. He meets her at the well. In her shame, Jesus says, I know where you are, and I just want you to know that I came for people like you, who feel like marriage didn't work out, life didn't work out, things happened where your heart was broken over and over and over again. Jesus came for the divorce and the disconnected. Last night after a service, a lady came up to me and she said, I'm the woman at the well. I've been married 5 times. And it's been so hard. It's been so difficult to trust. But I finally met Jesus, and now I've been married for 25 years. I found some hope. I was the woman at the well. And maybe that's your story. You've really struggled to connect with God because it's been hard for you to connect with people. When I think about somebody here at TVC who had a woman at the well moment, I think about Lucy. Watch her story.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I host here Facebook at TBC. Growing up, I went to a Baptist church since I was about 10. And as I grew up in that church, there was a lot of judgments that were passed of how everyone needed to live their life. And when I was about 16, I was struggling. And my youth pastor at the time, I asked him for help. I didn't know what to do with some things. There was a lot of questions that I had that I didn't feel were being answered in the church. And he told me to pray about it and open my Bible, and God would lead me where I needed to go. And it led me to Job. So as a 16-year-old girl, I read about a martyr. And a couple days later, he was talking to my mom and told my mother that there was no saving me. I was a lost cause. And I left the church. After that, I was married at a very young age. I was married at 17, had 2 beautiful daughters, but the marriage was very abusive. We were too young. And I tried, and it just didn't work. The abuse got worse, and we were divorced. I found alcohol and drugs to help kind of ease that pain. I got really bad into the drugs and alcohol, and ended up on probation. And they basically told me that I didn't have a choice. I had to stop. My parents brought me here, and I felt at home. I didn't feel judged. It made probation really easy for me. It made life a lot easier for me. I had found home not only in TBC, but I found me again, and I found God again. God is love. He is the hope that I so desperately needed to find. He has led me into these beautiful things in life. I'm a recovery coach, and I get to serve here, and I get to touch lives, and I couldn't have done any of that without God.
Can we thank Lucy for sharing her story with us? But that's not the only type of person that Jesus came for. He also came for the shady businessman. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 10, it says, Jesus went from there, and he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth. So Matthew is telling now his own story. Matthew was a tax collector. And we just had April 15th, and we just paid taxes. All of us paid taxes. I have to tell you, when I was younger, I used to like tax time because I used to get a tax refund. These days, because my kids are getting older and I cannot claim them on my taxes, I hate tax time. Does anybody agree with me on that? Okay. Some of you are looking like you like paying taxes. More power to you. But anyway, it says this. Jesus says to Matthew, sitting at his tax collector's booth, "Follow me," he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. And while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? This doesn't make sense to the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the religious elite. Jesus is eating with those people. And if you study the writings of Jesus, Jesus would say, because I came to seek and save the lost, the people far from God. See, here's why Matthew was so hated by both the Jews and the Romans. He was hated by the Romans because he took taxes from the Jews and didn't give them all to the Romans. He was hated by the Jews because he overtaxed them to enrich himself. He was greedy and guilty. And not only did Jesus come for those who were suffering from shame, like this woman who went through a divorce. And I just felt like I need to say this for somebody who maybe is feeling some shame because you had a failed marriage. A failed marriage does not make you a failure as a person. A failed marriage does not make you a failure as a person. But going back to Matthew, he's probably suffering from regret. He will never be in the in crowd. There's nobody who wants to sit at the lunch table with Matthew except Jesus. He came to heal him of his regret. As I thought about Matthew, I thought about this week Chuck Colson. Chuck Colson was one of the people who were really at the center of the Watergate scandal. He went to prison, and then after he got out of prison, a man named Tom came over to his house to share his faith with Chuck Colson. Chuck, in his book, Born Again, he talks about that moment when he came to Jesus, and he said this: outside in the darkness, the iron grip that I kept on my emotions began to relax. Tears welled up in my eyes as I groped in the darkness for the right key to start my car. Angrily, I brushed him away and started the engine. What kind of weakness is this? I said to nobody. As I drove out of Tom's driveway, the tears were flowing uncontrollably. I pulled to the side off of the road, not more than 100 yards from the entrance of Tom's driveway. With my face cupped in my hands, I forgot about machismo, about pretenses, about the fears of being weak. And as I did, I began to experience this wonderful feeling of being released. And then I prayed my first real prayer. God, I don't know how to find you, but I'm going to try. I'm not much the way that I am, but somehow I want to give myself to you. I don't know how to say more, so I repeated over and over the words, take me. God, I got so much regret for what I did, what I should have did, what I've done. So if you still heal people of regret, then Chuck Colson says, God, I'm one of them. So Jesus came for those who deal with shame, those who deal with regret, but he also came for the skeptic, Thomas, the unpersuaded, the unconvinced, Thomas, the skeptic. Here's how the story of Jesus' resurrection goes. In John chapter 20, verses 24 through 27, it says, now Thomas, also known as Didymus, which in Greek means twin, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where they put the nails and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house. And Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. And then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands. Reach your hand into my side and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. See, there's some of us who've been told all of our lives, just have faith and believe. But we're skeptical. We're not sure if we can believe all of this stuff about A man who walked this earth, who does miracles, and then he died, and then he came from the grave. But I want you to know that Jesus came for the skeptic. And honestly, I'll just tell you, my default to process in life, in all of life, is to be a skeptic. Just because you said it doesn't mean I believe it. I need to research it for myself. But I want you to know is that Jesus came for people like me and you, for the skeptics. Honestly, this is how I actually came to my own faith. I grew up going to church. I heard all the stories, all the Bible stories. But I remember the day that my faith became real. It was kind of like Jesus said to me in his own way, hey, Keith, I want you to try this out for yourself. To see that I'm good, that I'm faithful, that I love you. And then I started this faith journey. And the reason I'm here is because Jesus has a way of proving himself to skeptics. You know, when I think about somebody who kind of had a skeptical moment in their journey of faith, I think of my friend Bill Coburn here at TVC. Here's his story. Watch this.
Hi, my name is Bill Coburn. I've been coming to TVC regularly for about 5 years now. I grew up extremely poor. We had an outhouse. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We had rats, snakes, mice in our house. I woke up with mice on me before, things like that. And I remember from a very young age knowing that I wanted to work really hard and I wanted to escape poverty. So I was the first one in my family to go to college. I worked really hard at everything I ever did. And, the devil would tell me that you're so good, you don't need God. I was a little conceited, a little cocky, a little full of myself. And people resented me. Family members resented me. In my house, I have a 3-bedroom house. I had my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and her daughter moved in with us a couple years prior with 4 kids, and then she had a 5th kid while she was living there. So all of us are packed together in this little house. And I've got rules and I've got, different things like that. So I kept, I wasn't very forgiving, I guess is a good way of putting it. And at one point in December of 2020, I had gone about a week and nobody had said a word to me. So in my own house, nobody is speaking to me. I got a phone call 2 days later that there was a pipeline that ruptured in Walnut Creek, California. And I travel all over the country, going to different environmental disasters. I've been to a bunch of them. And I've got a plan because I'm a plan maker. I'm going to be there for as long as I'm there. And when I get back, I'm throwing everybody out of my house and, life will be good. 2 weeks after I'm there, Janet calls. She does a video call, which she's never done a video call, but I see her face on the phone and I'm like, ooh, I think I got to do something different. And God starts putting things on my heart. And when you hear people say that they talk to God or they've heard God's voice, and it's hard to explain, but you know when you know. So I come back and I'm telling her, hey, I want to pray together. I want to go to church. I want to, and all the steps that I spoke about, we need to do this. She's all on board. She's excited. She's happy. This is what she's been waiting for. So 2.5 years ago, my sister was diagnosed with cancer. I was able to talk to my sister about God and about, but she never went to church either. She was like me. She didn't need church, but she was a very giving person. She was a very good person. And I remember, it's less than a year ago now. I remember talking to my mom, and she said, so Brenda went and got saved. She went to my aunt's pastor and gave her life to Christ and got saved. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, because I'd been talking to her about it. And my mom said, Brenda wants to get baptized too. I go, well, I'm going to baptize her. I said, go get her husband and get the family. I'm going to baptize my sister in the hospital. I feel good that I was able to do that. I feel good that God put me in this position. He brought me to him and allowing me to help people.
Can we also thank Bill for sharing his story with us? As I bring this to a close, not only did Jesus come for those who are dealing with regret, with shame, who are unpersuaded, unconvinced, he came for the young and the restless. He came for a disciple like John. Here's how John tells his own story in his own words. In John 20, verse 3 and 4, it says, "So Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. Both were running, and the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first." So Jesus rises from the grave. He tells Mary Magdalene, and she goes and tells the other side, "The Lord is alive. He's risen. He's risen." And Peter can't quite believe it. And so he goes running for the tomb, and John outruns him to the tomb. But he's so scared that he doesn't go in. And so in John chapter 20, verse 8, it says, "Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first," John talking about himself, "also went inside, and he saw and believed." He saw for himself. He's not in there anymore. This whole time I've just been running around in circles, and there's some young people who are here today, and you've been running from relationship to relationship, bar to bar, bedroom to bedroom. You've just been running, trying to find some sense of purpose and destiny and meaning and hope. And here's what I want you to know. Jesus came for people like you as well. So as I bring this to a close, I want to invite everybody with me who are watching me at our campuses online to just take a moment and bow your head and close your eyes. And for some of you, you're new to church, you never experienced this. For some of you, you went to church as a kid or you visited church with somebody. And I think you might be thinking you know what's about to happen next, because the church that you grew up in, the pastor said, "Raise your hand, come forward if you want to accept Jesus." And here's what I want to tell you. I don't have a problem with churches that do that, but that's not what's going to happen. I won't make you raise your hand. I won't make you come forward, but I will ask you to consider a question. Could it just be possible that God brought you here today to say that I came for you? I came for your shame, your regret. I came for your doubt, your hopelessness. And I want to give you a new beginning. I want to give you a fresh start. And if that is you, I'd just like to ask you to pray a prayer with me. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. The words of this prayer are not magical, but something supernatural will happen. If you would put faith behind these words, you will experience what I experienced, what Bill experienced, what Lucy experienced, what thousands of people throughout the years have experienced here. You will enter into a relationship with Jesus. So with every head bowed, with every eyes closed, just really softly in your heart, I want to ask you to repeat this prayer after me. Dear Jesus, today I recognize that I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. I ask you to forgive me of my sins and to come into my heart through your Holy Spirit. And from this day forward, to the best of my ability, I will live for you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, can we celebrate with the people who made a decision to follow Jesus? Now, here's what I would say to you. If you prayed that prayer for the very first time, that was your first step towards God. That's the private part of your journey. The next step in your faith is what we're going to do, not next week, but the week after, is we're going to do baptism. I'm going to invite you to sign up for baptism. You can do it online or you can call the church office. And then you say, well, what do I do next? This is how I live. Well, just come back next week. We're starting a series called The Good Life, where we're going to talk about what does it mean to live a life of God's blessing and goodness. But I want you to think about that. Think about what your next step is as we sing this final song, or not this final song, but as we sing this next song on all of our campuses.